Hey guys, welcome back to Loft Sports. It's Tyler. Sorry I've been absent for a while, haven't had a chance to do videos. Went to the North Carolina game a couple weeks ago and then just haven't had time to put together Virginia, Navy, Georgia Tech, and Stanford previews. We pretty much knew once Notre Dame beat Virginia that we were going to be 11-1. I'd planned on making a video this week and posting it about what Notre Dame scenarios needed to fall their way for us to get in the playoff. That was going to be my next video because I figured we would go 11-1 and then wanted to see how things would shape out in the rest of the landscape of college football. Did not expect to be making a video tonight. It's Monday night. It's actually watching Monday Night Football, and news has broke that Brian Kelly is jetting South Bend and heading to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to take the LSU job. I'm a little surprised at this. Lincoln Riley jets Oklahoma to go to USC. I was surprised by that move. I thought it was a great hire by USC. I felt bad for Oklahoma. This move surprised me. I'm more surprised, to be honest with you guys, that LSU is willing to pay him probably upwards of $8, $9, $10 million to lure him away from Notre Dame. He's not leaving for similar pay. You have to know that. And I know the SEC shells out big money for coaches, but I'm more surprised that LSU wants Kelly than Kelly wants to go to LSU. I'm a little floored by this, to be honest. Kelly has not had very much success in big games, and when you play in the SEC West and you face Alabama, Auburn, A&M, eventually Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee every week, you got to win some big games. And Notre Dame's schedule is usually pretty tough year in and year out. But the last few years, because of this ACC agreement, we're actually playing only a handful of teams every year that are really good teams. And this year, look at our schedule. Stanford sucks. USC sucked. North Carolina fell on their face. Wisconsin and Purdue were okay. I mean, the best team we played was Cincinnati, and guess what? We lost to them by 2 scores on our own field. So the narrative that Brian Kelly can't win the big game, he's taking that with him to LSU. I sure hope so. So just a quick hitter list, if you will, of potential replacements for Brian Kelly. The first one that comes to mind is Urban Meyer. Now, I'm a Jaguars fan, and there was nobody happier than me when Jacksonville hired Urban Meyer last year. I think he's going to leave the Jags within the next 2 or 3 years. I don't think he likes coaching in the pros. Jacksonville is just a dysfunctional franchise. Yes, we have Lawrence as a franchise quarterback, but the reality is he's just not. I don't think he likes it in the NFL. I don't think it's what he thought it was going to be. You don't have the freedoms as a head coach in the pros that you do in college. You're basically, the whole town looks to you when you're a college football coach. South Bend, Indiana, Columbus, Ohio, Lincoln, Nebraska, Norman, Oklahoma, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You are the king of the court. In the NFL, you have a general manager, you have an owner you have to answer to. Now, yes, you have an AD and a university president and all that in college football, but it's not the same. These coaches make way more money than the higher-up personnel. In the pros, the GMs have all the say on drafting. The coaches obviously have a large say, but they don't have the final say. When you're the head coach, the AD doesn't tell you which players to recruit. You get to decide that. And they're not in your ear after every single game like an owner is, like a Jerry Jones is, or something like that. So it's a different landscape from the NFL to college. So Urban Meyer, I think, is the hot name. Do I want him at Notre Dame? Short term, yes. I don't think Urban Meyer is going to come and coach Notre Dame for 10 years. If he does, it would be a 5 to 8 year thing. I think we absolutely would win a national championship if Urban Meyer came to Notre Dame. I think he's still that good of a football coach. But the problem is can we pay him enough money? He's already said no to Notre Dame because of the academic thing around the Charlie Weiss time frame. And then he went to Ohio State. I think we could potentially lure Urban Meyer, but I'm not 100%. Another name would be Marcus Freeman. I think promoting Marcus Freeman to head coach would be a bold move for the university, but I think it would be an absolutely risk I'd be willing to take. This recruiting class that's coming in the next couple years has a lot of talent, and Marcus Freeman is a testament to that. Now, Kelly has done well recruiting at Notre Dame, but Marcus Freeman has taken that to another level of recruiting. I think he's an elite recruiter. We've seen how he's good at coaching. He was great at Cincinnati. The defense has drastically improved for Notre Dame from the beginning of the season in the Toledo and Florida State games. Going forward, basically from week 3 or 4 on, the defense has been lights out. So I'm very pleased with the defense. He doesn't have any head coaching experience. That would be the only turnoff. Now, Bob Stoops didn't have any head coaching experience, if I remember correctly, when he took over at Oklahoma. Obviously, within 2 or 3 years, he had a national championship. Brian Kelly came from Cincinnati, came from Central Michigan, came from Grand Valley State, where he won a lot of games. Kelly was a seasoned head coach. Marcus Freeman would not. But he's been under Luke Fickell. He's been under Brian Kelly now for a year. I think he would be a very formidable candidate. Whoever gets the coaching job at Notre Dame should absolutely pay Marcus Freeman to retain him, because I do think, if nothing else, he's a top-tier defensive coordinator, and I do think one day he will be a head coach. Will it be next year at Notre Dame? I don't know. I'm not the person that has the answer to that question. Another candidate would be Luke Fickell, coming from Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati is going to the Big 12 sometime in the next 4 or 5 years, but Cincinnati is not going to be able to pay this man what he deserves to coach. I really thought he was in line for the Michigan job if Harbaugh got crushed again by Ohio State, but being that Michigan apparently has now cracked the Ohio State code, I think Luke Fickell is a serious candidate to jump ship to Notre Dame. He's also going to be on Oklahoma's list, but I think he fits better at Notre Dame than he does at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's Midwest, but they're a little more of a flair, finesse team, spread you out, fast players all over. Notre Dame is some of that, but we're still a little more blue-collar, good defense, cold weather, kind of like an Ohio State, kind of like Cincinnati. Cincinnati and Notre Dame are somewhat, identifiable in the same context of how they play football. They're more win the game in the trenches, have great skill players, but the meat of your team is on the offensive and defensive lines of scrimmage, which is the way it should be. That's why the SEC wins all these national championships, is because they build their team from the front lines back. These West Coast and these Big 12 schools try to build from the outside in, and it just doesn't win. Finesse teams don't win championships. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. Luke Fickell, I think, would be a very solid candidate. There's also Dave Aranda from Baylor, who's won 10 games this year and has an outside shot, actually, at getting Baylor into the playoff if chaos were to emerge on Saturday. Them beating Oklahoma State, obviously part of that. Dave Aranda has been a hot name for the USC job. He was a hot name for the LSU job. And now that both of those positions are filled, Oklahoma looked like the front runner, but now Notre Dame is open. So I don't know. Dave Aranda, don't love the idea. I don't know if he would be a good coach, but he's a hot name. He's a flavor of the month kind of name. I am not that worried about this decision. I'm going to try to make this video not too terribly long. I'm not too concerned. I watched an Oklahoma fan post a video today that was almost in tears. He was so hurt and backstabbed. I think Notre Dame is 1,000 times in better shape than Oklahoma with this move. Than Oklahoma was. Oklahoma, their 2023 class was legitimate. For those of you that follow recruiting that far out, it is already beginning to crumble. People are jumping ship. Some are following Riley to USC, I'm sure. Others have reopened their commitment. They may still recommit to Oklahoma, but they've now opened their commitment to see what Oklahoma does and see what other coaching carousel chips fall into place. I think Notre Dame, now they're going to have to make a relatively quick move on this. You go all in after Urban Meyer. You go all in after Luke Fickell, or make Marcus Freeman the coach. Do it quickly, because signing day is nearly upon us. You don't want to lose the prime players in this recruiting class that you've already got. I think these kids have committed to Notre Dame, not just because of Brian Kelly. I don't think the recruiting classes are going to fall apart. Now, there are going to be some kids that decommit from Notre Dame because they wanted to play for Brian Kelly. But again, they could recommit to Notre Dame once we decide who our coach is. Or, we could get other players that have decommitted from Oklahoma, from LSU, since Ed Orgeron was fired, from USC. etc., etc., from Florida, from Miami when they eventually fire Manny Diaz, which I don't think is actually going to happen now, but is not still out of the question. Although I think if you were going to fire him, they would have done it already because the season's been over. So Notre Dame could get some of those players. These guys are going to, and there's also the transfer portal. These things are going to work itself out. I'm not that concerned. I think Notre Dame is in much better shape in that regard than Oklahoma. But my instant reaction for this is maybe this is a good thing. Brian Kelly has done a lot of good things at Notre Dame. He's went to the national championship game. He's went to the playoff twice in the last 3 years. He's had 5 straight 10-win seasons. I think he was getting sick of the backlash from the fans and the media about can't win the big game, but it was warranted. And as fans, we want to be relevant, and I'm grateful for Kelly that we are relevant, but I think at the end of the day, this is actually going to be an okay thing for Notre Dame. It's probably mutual. My feelings are, I thank you, Brian Kelly, for your 12 years here or whatever it was and all your wins, most wins in school history. But I want to try something else too. I think this has been great for both parties. Kelly is going to, even if he flops at LSU, he's always going to be remembered for turning Notre Dame around as much as he could. And now Notre Dame has a chance to go out and make a splash hire and get over that hump and get to the Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson level where we can compete in those big games and eventually win them and get what we all sought after since 1988, which is a national championship. I'm 30 years old. I was born in 91. I have not seen Notre Dame win a national championship. It is my all-time dream, and now that I have a son, it's especially my all-time dream is that I get to share that with my son and my dad because I haven't got to experience it, so it would be magical if that could happen while my dad is still around, of course, and then while I now have my son. So hopefully this is a good thing, a blessing in disguise. I wish Brian Kelly nothing but the best. I really do. I'm shocked that he left now because we still have a legitimate chance. I mean, all we need is Georgia to beat Alabama and either Michigan or Oklahoma State or Cincinnati to lose. And I think one of those things is probably going to happen, and Notre Dame's in the playoff. But now we're going to be in the playoff with an interim coach, which may not be the worst thing. Wouldn't that be crazy? And I'm not saying this is going to happen, and I'll leave it on this. What if Kelly goes and the team that he leaves behind was in a rebuild year, and we were? Jack Cohn is not a franchise, a premier college quarterback. This offensive line has been patchworked. Wouldn't it be something crazy if Notre Dame somehow gets in? Kelly's already gone. He's on the tarmac in Baton Rouge. And Marcus Freeman takes Notre Dame out there, who I'm assuming would be the interim head coach, and Notre Dame beats Georgia. I don't think there's any way that happens. Maybe in a parallel universe, I think Notre Dame doesn't have a chance against Georgia. But man, wouldn't that be wild? You want to talk about Brian Kelly's stock dropping before a ball is even snapped in Baton Rouge. His team goes out there and they beat Georgia, or even play close to Georgia, because no one has even been within 2 touchdowns of Georgia this season, except for Clemson in the first game. Wouldn't that be something wild if Notre Dame went out there and lost by like 3 points or even 10 points and made Georgia earn it, or even God somehow beat them and played in the Natty? They don't even have to win the Natty, just win a semifinal game. Think about that. Think about how crazy that would be. Again, I'm not suggesting anything like that. This is Georgia's national championship to lose. It's just a matter of who do they want to jack around and lose it to? Us, Cincinnati, Michigan, or Oklahoma State? Or do they want to jack around and let Alabama beat them twice, which I don't think is the case. I don't think Alabama's as good as they've been in previous years. Several games this season should have told you that. It's not a knock on Alabama. They're still having a pretty good season. It's just you can't be the best team every single year. So let me know what you guys think. Who do you want to see as Notre Dame's new coach? Do you want to see the Irish get into the playoff and get potentially humiliated with or without Brian Kelly? Or do you just want to go to the Fiesta Bowl or the Peach Bowl and play Wake or Pitt or play Michigan State or somebody in a bowl game and hopefully finally win a damn meaningful bowl game? Let me know down below. Candidates, playoff or no playoff. This is Tyler with Loft Sports signing off. Go Irish.